Trojan.
Now, so
Oh, okay.
It's supposed to be rub and tug. Or tug. Rub or tug.
All right. Bad ideas, good stories. Number 41. Fuck, we're giving her. I'm Pat. That's Dusty.
I'm Dusty.
Yes.
Who's Pat?
We are now experimenting with a format which is sans video.
Excuse me. Well, and I immediately forgot that and was like looking around. And
Looking at the cameras that aren't recording. And so I don't know. We have had a little bit of feedback from people that miss our face on the video, but I kind of...
way.
Like there's one comment from Stefan. And Stefan from Canadian Talk with Stefan, is that it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Put your faces back on.
He missed our faces. He thought we were too drunk to do the video. And
wow.
Because
Fair enough.
I'm a wild party.
That sounds like something you do.
I'm full of
seen
comedy
you.
and alcohol. Usually the combination of those two things.
You think, eh? And then you're like, nope.
No, I'm actually stone cold serious.
You seem like you'd be a lot of fun. You seems like it, right?
You seem like you'd be a lot of fun. Except I'm not. Yeah, I'm kind of a buzzkill.
So unless you're into that, then that's perfect.
Yeah, for sure.
Honestly.
I really found my groove when I
exactly-
could beat people for extra, hobby.
What's like? I was trying to think of a really I want to say like tough to enjoy cheese, and I couldn't think of one. But that's
I guess like a
what
really
P
harsh
is.
blue cheese would be a good one.
Yeah, you know what I mean. Something you gotta have.
That's me?
You gotta have a certain palate for.
A certain palate.
But
I
then
am.
people are like,
yes,
"Fuck,
I am an
want
acquired
that."
taste.
They
I am
get
an
that. They
acquired
want to put
taste.
you on crackers.
Jalapeno popper. That's me.
Hey. Yep. Mm-hmm. What do you got there?
These are actually tattoo dice, and it's funny because you can go to some shops and they're called tattoo paint and roll. You order these dice, and you can roll a combination for your specific tattoo designs. I just keep them here as like an anxiety toy to play with, different, and they're kind of like Dungeons and Dragons. Like there's this one's I think maybe a 15-sided dice, and otherwise there's 6-sided dice. So you can roll a combination of like 3 of them, any of them.
Pick any 3. Eh?
This one, the 20 or however many sided is where you would get your design. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So first off, so let's roll
There's
this.
7 wieners on that. Why is it mostly wieners?
It's all dick. So we're gonna roll. You're gonna get this on your butt. Whatever you roll is what we're
very exotic.
So my job then would be to make a combination of a kappa flying a kite and an oni. So you would have like a little demon and a kite and a kappa, like kind of a water monster, but it would go on your butt.
Oh, water monster.
So a lot of these shops, in fact, our shop does it once in a while. We have the roll the dice, but this is my specific collection because it's for Japanese designs. But there's also, dragon, fire, or snake. It's
I was
pretty
looking
cool.
at these, I recognize most of these words, and they're like, "What am I gonna get?" We're like, "Well, we'll let you know when we're done."
So this one would be a kitsune and a blossom on a foot, So that's kind of interesting. A kitsune is a Japanese mythological creature that has like the head of a dragon, the body of a deer. It's got like flaming mane, and it's apparently like a real badass. Like
Sure, nimble, I bet.
Yeah, it's supposed to be the most furious of all Japanese mythological creatures, but it's a pacifist and a vegetarian. So it'll walk on grass so lightly it doesn't damage the grass, but if you fuck with it, pretty much any mythological creature will get fucked up by it. So that's the thing about kitsune, like very passive but very furious if it gets wronged. In defense of the innocent, right? So that's a little bit of the culture and the history of
You can get that on your foot in a flower.
with some blossom. What kind? Plum blossom, cherry blossoms. There's a real culture behind, I guess,
Stinkweed.
stinkweed. And behind Japanese tattooing, it's called wabori. There's a real culture behind it, mythology, symbolism, the accompaniment of what goes with certain animals and certain backgrounds. Yeah, depending on how deep you want to get into the culture, because I wouldn't want to appropriate somebody else's culture. That's a very...
You can appreciate.
Yes, well...
Analysis.
when I went to Osaka...
Analysis? Sorry, I said that wrong.
Analysis?
God, I don't know how to
Yes.
talk today.
Yes. The rapist?
Get me to my therapist.
Not a fan of the ladies, are you, Trebek? But analyst. When I went to Japan, it was kind of a huge compliment, actually. Our tour guide that took us to Japanese tattoo shops was introducing me as specializing in wabori style. And they're like, oh, really? And next thing you know, they're trying to show me like things and like local art and local statuary and stuff like that. And that was really different as opposed to a guy who's just here to collect books or, meet people and, go home with a whole bunch of collectible stuff. I was more interested in learning about the stuff that I wasn't aware of. Yeah.
Feeling the ancient power.
The ancient power.
From the
I'm not gonna lie, some of those
sites.
spaces have some pretty heavy energy if you're a woo type mentality. We went to a couple of Shinto shrines and I'm like, woo. It was almost walking into like a fog. You knew you were in a heavy environment, just like, okay, you should probably be polite here. That was just me though. It's other people may not get
birds
that.
quit fucking around in the area.
A little bit, yeah. They just fall out of the sky, hit the ground. Woo.
Just walk around.
Slow motion.
Yeah, don't fly over those guys.
Woof.
Interesting.
Yeah, so what have you been up to the last couple of weeks?
I've been keeping it real, living large, living the dream. What are those things people always say whenever you just ask them, they don't have anything to say?
Oh, yeah. I
what I've
heard
been
that that's a working class, the
yeah.
same as ever. We're
Yeah.
living the dream.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, it's been going good actually. We've been jamming a bit. We got a show on Halloween. Halloweenies coming up right away.
Saturday or Sunday?
Saturday.
That's the 30th?
It's the 30th.
Oh.
So not
Where
really
were you
Halloween,
playing?
but the old feisty goat, I guess.
Feisty Goat. There's a few gigs going on.
There is the Halloween for Humanity at the Black Cat. Always
Yeah.
a good time.
That one's got a bunch of local guys doing cover bands.
And that's and we're gonna play a bunch of covers too.
We're playing covers on the other side of town. Come
Yeah.
see us, guys.
In a different animal themed bar.
Yes. Feisty Goat. Black Cat.
But yeah, it'll be fun. It was fucking something to do for Halloween. So yep. Be getting ready for that. And piss all else. Weather's been kind of miserable, so I've been enjoying that.
I don't know. It's been cool. It's been
On the high plains.
rainy. Yeah,
It's
it's been
been windy
rainy,
out
but like
there.
I don't know what people expect at the end of October in Saskatchewan. Like, yeah, it's getting cooler, and
It's what I expect.
Yes.
I do not enjoy it though.
this is a good point. This is a good
My
point.
expectations are met. I thought it would suck.
Living the dream
we're
in
used
late
to
October.
more fucking snow by now, honestly.
That's exactly it. Usually I remember from the time I was a child. So this is an interesting one. From the time I was a child and I was still trick-or-treating, Halloween rolled around and the puddles that were on the ground just had a layer of ice over them. There might have been like 1 or 2 snows, but it's nothing too crazy, but you definitely needed to dress warmer, and I don't think it's changed that much in the last,
I think you live in the city.
30
That's where it's
years.
different.
Yeah, well, sure.
I just have a childhood of constantly made to fit snowsuits. That's all I remember. They all had, because there was this much fucking snow on the ground.
Already
I
by
remember,
October.
Oh, for sure, man. I remember lots of Halloweens just having to shovel. I remember one, it was so cold, I had a fucking, what do you call it? It was done up like the mummy, So I had like all these like, cloth bandages, and we were like bobbing for apples and shit in our class in grade 5 or something like that. I remember going outside afterwards, my shit was all just frozen hard. Like,
Who the fuck would have you bobbing for apples and then sending you out into like Saskatchewan?
I don't know if they sent me, but I was
October?
probably like, hey, I'm soaked. I wonder if this will freeze, And it was
It did.
cold enough to definitely freeze fucking hard. Yeah. But fringe living's like that, I guess.
Fringe. Well, how far
Shittier
north
weather
is it?
and
I guess
20
you
years
were
behind.
about 3 hours north, 4 hours north, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a little bit different than Saskatoon. I don't think it's like city
Well, and
life.
being right along the river, too, it makes a big difference.
Does it?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, you'll get like, it just keeps it more moderate, right? It's like a big fucking temperature control thing. And a lot of times things will build along the river and then fuck off to someplace else, like storms and shit like that.
Yeah, I didn't
Pull
know that
off
at
that,
all.
and then sometimes you get the rain along here. We're not getting any place else with little sprinkles. But
Yeah, I'm not a scientist.
Frequently, it's nicer rate in Saskatoon. Cut the
that's
wind too. Wind's such a factor every fucking place else.
guess.
So that was the big thing this last week at work. I was at like even just stopping in people's yards and shit. It was 4 degrees or something, which isn't even freezing yet, but it was so bitterly fucking cold with the wind. It was just brutal.
The wind.
So that was my wind complaint.
Yeah, well, I guess that's part of
Living in
Saskatchewan.
Saskatchewan.
Well, my partner and I and my kid have been discussing when she graduates, maybe relocating to the coast or somewhere more temperate.
Yep.
These heavy winters are really grating on me. Last year we had minus 52. There was a couple it's not just the wind chill. It's like it got cold.
Yeah,
like,
it's fucking cold.
There was a couple days, I think, last winter here in Saskatchewan that it was colder than Mars. And we still have to, warm up the truck, get to work. I've got a tattoo client showing up, or we got to get the kid to school. It's not like school here shuts down when it's colder than Mars. So, and everybody talks about the climate change and like that temperature will change. Well, I just see it fluctuating hotter in the summer and colder in the winter. I don't see it becoming more moderate. Like people would say, okay, so it's going to turn into a desert, and your winters are going to be, more moderate, and the summers are going to be very hot. Or I see it getting really hot in the summer, plus 40, and minus 50 in the winter. And I think I'm going to have to find where in Canada we can locate that would be more moderate.
Underground.
Yeah.
In a dome, airship.
Yeah, these are all options. These are all viable options.
I'm into it.
Yeah, so we were looking around at BC. Vancouver is ridiculous. Burnaby, Surrey, Abbotsford. I got a buddy who lives up in Prince George, and that's right in the mountains. And he's like, it's a lot like PA. There's lots of snow. The weather's a little more moderate, but it's a lot of unhappy people. You can afford to live there, but you're 8 hours away from Vancouver still. And there's a lot of I don't trust the government types, which is right up my alley, And I think that might have been him just saying a veiled way of saying anti-vaxxers. But I'm down for leave me alone in the mountains kind of lifestyle. I'm down for that. But until I can make a living with the leave me alone in the mountains, I need people to tattoo. So it's kind of hard to just...
So I feel like if you start hanging around with a bunch of other leave me alone in the mountains people, very short step to you're doing a cult.
Militia.
Like
Militia.
Okay, cult. Well, yeah, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. There'll be some teachings involved.
Well, 100%. I'm in the process of working on my magazine, and I'm like, this is pretty culty.
Manifesto.
Yeah, manifesto, for the DSR stuff, and like the idea of like sobriety and resilience lifestyle is part of our trip, right? And for better or worse, you get around a whole bunch of off-grid, leave-me-alone types, and, okay, this is the new standard we're trying to establish, right? Are you down? No, you're my enemy.
So to the death or to the death?
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. I guess if you were self-sufficient and outside of the grid, then fucking A, live whatever lifestyle you want. But as long as you're comfortable with your relative luxury, well, I think that, there's a lot of cultural masturbation that's happening.
You know what I did see since I seen these last was that, I shouldn't say seen. It happened, and I saw highlights of the Tyson Fury, Deontay Wilder heavyweight boxing fight, which was actually...
Has Tyson lost anything?
Pretty good fight. Not that one. No, he... there was some controversy around it. There was an extended count that many people said maybe stretched as much as a 15 count that he got earlier in the fight because he got dropped a couple times, but he came back and put him away, and it was actually, from what I'd seen, a very entertaining heavyweight boxing fight. Mm-hmm. So there's few and far between.
Yeah, I haven't been following sports,
me neither.
MMA, anything.
Because everything's so uninteresting, But it was actually interesting. They had some history. It was a trilogy fight, and both dudes are like, pretty big personalities, and like that Deontay Wilder hits like a Mack truck, so hard. But then Tyson Fury just just box. Let's get up there and do some boxing.
Do
and
some
be
dodging,
6'9" monster and box you up.
I just saw...
King.
Where was it? I just saw a meme that was, I'm not even sure if it's called a meme. I'm pretty sure it was Floyd Mayweather refused to get a photo with a guy because the guy was wearing fingernail polish.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and he wouldn't get a selfie with the dude.
He was worried he was going to get aroused.
Yeah, exactly, It's like, my boner. Will that show up on the picture? Same thing.
The first time.
Who else is Manny Pacquiao running for politics or the president of the Philippines?
Yeah.
So this is kind of interesting. And he also had some politically incorrect things to say.
Oh, he's old school.
Yeah, old school, I guess, Filipino Catholic Muslim, or Catholic machismo. In the Philippines, the north is like real Catholic and the south is really Muslim, so you have a lot of violence between these two cultures. But all of it has a hefty dose of Spanish machismo. Sure. Do not take shit. This is how life is, And I think the hardcore Catholics are definitely, Muslims, maybe are more polite about it.
Wasn't that Duterte their leader? Mm-hmm. He's the guy
he's got the death squads for the drugs.
Murdered people himself, not ordered it, pulled the trigger.
Oh, seriously? I didn't know about that. But
it's
they're pretty hyper military right now.
Yeah, well, yeah.
My buddy who's living in Sabong Beach.
Really
in the
giving you a lot over
Philippines.
here. Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, well, apparently,
I'm
you
really
know,
involved. Oh, yeah, yeah. Sorry.
he's during COVID, there wasn't a single case in his town, and they still had military checkpoints and were allowed out of their house for 1 hour a day, and that was for mandatory, going to the grocery and stuff like that. Otherwise, it was locked down. And my buddy, he's like, there hasn't been a single case on this island, let alone in this town, but we're still on that kind of lockdown. And I looked at it as, what's his name again? The president? Duterte, yeah. It was sort
If
of
I'm
like
saying that right.
him being able to flex that muscle to see how much he can use this new, power he had for civil control. And what a convenient time to do it. It's like, oh, okay, so let's see if we can put military checkpoints and stop people's mobility and keep them in their houses.
Dictators are, they're not thinking long term. They're all like, oh, what's going on right now?
Yeah.
Ooh, how can I manipulate this so it benefits me? Mm-hmm. I might not be here next week.
But that being said, crime's dropped. In Singapore, you don't see a lot of graffiti or people spitting on the streets. You've got that immediate corporal punishment kind of angle. I remember there was a guy who got caned, a Canadian guy that got caned, I think, for getting caught for graffiti in Singapore. Oof. Yeah, and there was all of these people that were very upset about him getting 10 canes across his back for fucking up a foreign country. My opinion is if I go to Saudi Arabia, I'm going to grow my beard. My girlfriend's going to wear a hijab.
Yeah.
I'm going to respect the neighborhood.
When in Rome.
Yeah.
When you're in Rome.
You should probably respect that,
Yeah, definitely something to be said for that. You fucking know what the rules are where you're at.
Yeah, like trust some Canadian
I've not been good at that myself.
snowboarder type to like, whatever, I do what I want. Don't you know I'm Canadian? Psst, spray painting on a wall. Well, you're in Singapore. Whack, whack, whack. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, my human rights. Okay. So, yeah, same thing in the Philippines. If you want to live there, I guess, and you don't want to get the fuck out, you're going to have to go along with the rules of the land. Although, if they shoot you for protesting the rules of the land and you can't really change those systems, that might be a different story. You're not allowed to leave and you're not allowed to protest is a different angle than I don't like it here, I'm getting out, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A fair bit of that going on over there.
Well, it's a fair bit of that going on pretty much everywhere, like we're living in weird times where there's a public health crisis. We're living with a public health crisis.
Weirdest of
and
times.
Literally the borders are closed. We don't want you. Don't come here. I don't care where you're from. Like if I wanted to move to Sweden or, somewhere else, chances are they're like, nope, you can't come here. Our borders are shut down. And increasingly, the protesting of what's happening is being criminalized. So that's an interesting shift in an otherwise free culture that likes to use words like freedom and liberty and things like that until something like this happens. So we really have to balance that, individual versus the collective, the collective good versus individual good, which is, I guess the root of all laws. We put these laws in place to keep everybody safe. If you don't want to go with the laws, we put you in jail. That seems pretty law and order, right?
Well, and even before that, generally you're given a fine. Mm-hmm. Unless it's like really inflicting harm on somebody.
Mm-hmm. That's, like any law,
yeah.
Right? A traffic law is different than something that's like harming somebody. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it's kind of an interesting times we're living in. Wait and see how the other foot drops or what was going to happen in a couple of years. Like we talk about, oh, shit, we're going to go maybe move in 4 years when my kid graduates school. But
that's pretty soon, actually.
Well, yeah, it's 4 years.
Keep forgetting, geez.
But what's the socioeconomic climate going to be like? Will there be civil unrest all through these highly populated areas because of 4 years of clamp down legislation on who, what, where, when, and how you can move or who you can associate with? What's that going to do to a culture of a highly, I guess, congested, areas? So maybe living in Saskatchewan, which is less congested, is going to be a benefit in 4 years. I guess we have to wait and see.
Yeah, I don't know. Mm-hmm. Tough to say.
Well,
what else we got going on?
I don't know.
Oh, yeah, Enlisted. I was talking to him about that on the way over here because I was watching it. Been playing some video games like I like to do.
That's a game?
And, and it's like a free-to-play multiplayer one. So it's kind of like set in World War II, kind of like Battlefield 5 or fucking Call of Duty or whatever. But when you spawn, you spawn with a squad of AI guys.
Oh, they're
And
all
then-
AI. They're not
and
other
then,
players.
no, it is other players.
Okay.
But then you can.
But you have your own squad.
Yeah, and then you can switch between members of your squad, but still play like first person. So it's kind of like you're fielding 6 guys all at
That's
once.
handy.
And it's kind of cool.
What's it called?
Enlisted. And
For what system?
I think it's on all of them right now. And
How do they make money? Do you have to upgrade? Do you get skins?
I
or?
think you can do that same pay to play shit where it's like you can either play and get the points or just pay to get them and unlock better equipment or whatever. And it's the same company that does. What was it? What did I say it was called? War Thunder.
I'm not
And we
familiar.
played- oh, fuck! It's actually another also very fun World War II game where you play as the equipment. So it's like tanks and warships and airplanes, and very deep. Like if you're like a World War II nerd, which I'm not really, but it's like it's just. I think I remember playing it and being like, man, if I was a nerd, I'd love this, because it's just so much information and like this crazy long tree of upgrades and shit, so you can get through all these different types of equipment, right? So anyway, same company, and it seems like they've got a pretty deep like management system for all the traits of all these different squad guys, because it's not just like randomly generated. It's like this one's Bill, that one's Bob, this one's Doug, and then they're each carrying this equipment. So if you take Doug out but you don't take his equipment, then his equipment's out of that fucking round. Like there's these different management levels of things that I think just get you a little more engaged that I didn't see in other games. Or I guess he was talking about it. There were some other games he'd mentioned that I hadn't played that they'd taken aspects from. So it seems like it's kind of an interesting mix of a couple different shooters. What the fuck was that one you were talking about?
So that's war.
Wasn't the Division, was it? No.
That's Clancy's.
Counter-Strike. Yeah, you said you thought it sounded like a Counter-Strike kind of vibe too with the squad management. And that was just kind of cool to me because I don't really see that much. And I'm like, fuck, if it's cool and free, I'm down.
Well, that Enlisted, what's the era that it is? Present day era
World War
military?
II.
World War II? Enlisted is?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So it's more vintage style, like
Yeah.
guns and tanks
Totally.
and stuff like that. Yeah.
And it's and I think they're gonna have 4 campaigns ultimately, and there's the fucking 2 right now are Tunisia and what the fuck was the other one I told you about? Normandy. So yeah, played in like those maps.
And you can only
areas.
play the Allies, right?
No, funny enough, you have to pick somebody off the start. So I was like, well, those uniforms look cool. Who's this? And so
That
yeah.
looks like a Hugo Boss outfit.
Yeah, yeah. I want to play with the MP40, and you have to be period correct with the ammu and the guns.
Yeah,
so
you can't have a Luger if you're an American.
that's exactly it, and that's actually in this game. It's like that too. Like you can't equip that shit if it's not of the proper side. You can still pick it up out in the playing field.
Oh,
like you
okay,
can in
yeah.
any other game, but I've never seen that also where it was. Well, I have seen that, but it's kind of a nice mix between like a simulation kind of feel, but still arcadey enough that it was accessible. And they got cool little mechanic things like the peek around the fucking side of the building thing.
Yeah.
That some games do. This one does really smoothly actually, which I like because I'm usually pretty clumsy with that. It always feels like I'm kind of blipping in and out.
Yeah, I have a hard time with a lot of those games that the controls, I have to relearn all of the other games that I'm familiar with. And this one, it's like, oh, okay, I got to do all this extra stuff, or these buttons do this when the other game, the other button does this. So, yeah, it's hard to be a Fortnite guy and then all of a sudden go into like something that's like you pick it up with another hand, or you shift through your tools with another hand. I play Fortnite pretty much every night, at least a few rounds.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
I've never played it.
Really fun, free again, and there's a learning curve. It depends on what kind of player you want. Like there's obviously a Minecraft generation that plays it, and you'll shoot at them, and all of a sudden they've built a castle around themselves, and I'm like, oh, this fucking sucks, because I'm used to first person shooters, so I just start throwing grenades at them to blow up their castle. But you can also use the environment to hide, and it's real simple. It's basically the premise is, and it's goofy because everybody has these weird outfits and stuff like that, but you land on an island with 100 other players, and you try to be the last one standing. That's it. Within the rules that are available and the tools that you could pick up, there's tons of ammo, but it's very cartoony and lighthearted, which is funny because like you might have a Captain America chasing you, but you are, a Christmas tree or a fuzzy teddy bear or whatever it is. And it's pretty fun.
You enjoy this?
Oh man, I love it. It like as a first-person shooter, it's not really overly violent.
Yeah,
It's very
fair enough,
cartoony.
fair enough,
It's
yeah.
there's no gore. You see people's like, it's really lighthearted. It's not real military, and the fact that they keep incorporating these like teddy bear or like crazy stuffed animal characters running around with like rocket launchers is pretty fun. It's Fortnite's a fun one, and it's huge. Like they get so much.
It is. It's massive. Hey?
Yeah. So many people are playing. You can go on at 4 a.m. and you're still finding 100 people, no problem. Like and it's all around the world too. So Fortnite's a good one.
Snort nerd.
Yeah. Back to that Enlisted. I just one of the things I did the last couple of weeks was a friend of mine had recommended it like crazy, and I finally got it. Starship Troopers, the book,
Okay.
by Robert Heinlein, is phenomenal. Are you familiar with the movie?
Absolutely.
The movie, I laughed because I really loved the movie. It was, again, that over-the-top, almost satirical, comical commentary on like a happy fascism, right? And it's like, join the army. Do you want to learn more? And it was like all that stuff. The aliens are attacking our peaceful planet. Do you want to learn more? You know, kids are enlisting. Want to learn more? And it's always this like happy fascism. And the premise is that you need to have military service in order to become a citizen in their society, and for the right to vote, and automatic choice to have kids, and to become a citizen, you have to have military service. You can live there, but you don't get a chance to vote, and you have to join a lottery in order to have kids if you haven't done military service. And I thought it was such an interesting, joking commentary for people. Like, sure, it's a shoot 'em up. Hey, bugs attacking. But there's this underlying thing that was like, wow, there's a lot of commentary on the militarism. And my buddy's like, you need to read that book. So I read the book, and I'm like, oh. It's like a 3-day read. It's super fast. It's very interesting. It's very pro-military. It's pro the culture where you need to have a certain level of duty committed to your country in order to make decisions for the country. And it was very controversial when it came out in 1959. So I did a lot of background research, too, on it. And apparently the movie Starship Troopers was done to almost criticize the book. Like because the book is very pro-military, pro this culture where you need to have civic service in order to participate. And otherwise, hey, you live here, have your jobs, but you don't get to decide what's right for the country. You know, you need to have had civic service to decide what's right for the country. And it's very, very thought-provoking, because to me, it puts into play so much stuff that's happening in our society. We talk about liberty. We talk about our rights, right? But what have you done to protect your community? You know, you want rights without the responsibilities. We could look at it with the vaxxers. I want my freedoms, but you don't give a shit what's happening in your community. How much freedom do you deserve if you don't care the consequences of your actions? So this book is very interesting because it puts that on the forefront.
And I think even like in that example, like lots of them just don't think it's them. You know what I mean? They think they haven't seen it. It's not in their life. It's not. They're not part of the problem. Even if it is real or it's as bad as they say, they're still not the ones contributing to it. And it's again, and they all do that. And then I mean, some of them are still doing it on their deathbeds, but many of them do come to the realization eventually once they get it, or a loved one does, and they're like, "Oh, this is a real thing." And it's just unfortunate because it shouldn't take that long. So shouldn't take that much tragedy around you for you to realize what the fuck's going on. But
in Starship Troopers, they're living in this militarized society where only like ex-military and veterans are allowed to vote what's right for the country. And it boiled down to a very simple premise that citizenship was reserved for those individuals that were willing to go through a hard, voluntary sacrifice and service for the benefit of their community. And if you didn't want to go through that hard, voluntary sacrifice and service, the community isn't as important to you. You can be the babysat, and we are the babysitters. And it was a very interesting premise, and it really puts a lot on a person's thoughts, or to me, made me consider the duty versus individualism, right? That real principle. Like, how much in our society have we removed individual duty for the greater community, right? Like, think about it. What is our duty in this country? Living here.
Well, I think anybody's
Taxes.
duty living anywhere is to like, the basic duty is to not contribute to shittiness. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's your basic duty is like, don't be the problem, right? And then anything beyond that is dealing with whatever the problem is. And then
that's valid.
That might kind of depend on your community, how actively you're engaged in it. Because if you don't live in a place that has an opioid issue because it's a small enough community and it's removed, or it doesn't seem to be, then maybe, you don't engage with it like that, right? But maybe those that are do in their community. You know, like you see a bit of that.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate because it takes people being touched by tragedy in some way for them then to engage in their community in the way that offsets that.
In a responsibility sense. What's your personal responsibility to your community?
Yeah,
right?
That's interesting.
Because that's just it. My buddy, his premise that got us on this whole trip was he sees a huge, especially in the younger generations, a huge emphasis on they want their rights and their privileges without the aspect of duty and responsibility to a larger community, right? They want all the toys without the work, you know, this idea. And he put it on me. He's like, what do you consider your duty? And I'm a bit of a libertarian. I'm like, I don't know, man. What does the government do for me? And he lambasted me and gave me a checklist of all the things the government does for me, and I'm like, well, that's pretty valid. Yeah, I should probably check myself.
Pull my pants back up.
Yeah,
after that,
right.
Yeah.
And then he told me, you got to read this book, you know, Starship Troopers. So I did, and it's funny because in the span of like 3 days, my attitude on a lot of things got altered. You know, well, no, it kind of got refined. You know, I believe that at the very, very least, we have a duty to our community for its safety, you know what I mean? For its well-being, you know, paying tax is a minimum, you know? Yeah, I pay taxes and that's my duty. Okay, cool, yeah. But what more are you doing for your community than that, right? And there's a lot of people that just want to take. And they don't feel they owe the community anything better. And his opinion on this also carries over into the anti-vaxxing thing. It's like, you don't even want to, you know, get 2 jabs that have quite obviously been proven to be safe. You're so, you know,
billions of shots now.
My rights, my freedoms, you're encroaching on my rights. And it's like, dude, you've never really had your rights encroached on. You know, you haven't done any public service. You haven't done anything except for yourself your entire life. Can you go get 2 fucking vaccines? You know, that's it. That's all we're asking for the greater community. But then there's the other side that, like, how much do we expect the government to decide what our duty is? Right, to that community versus as an individual. So this whole thing has been kind of put on me, right? Where
I think it's kind of a multi-layered thing. I think like
obviously,
so like the government angle on that is like, you know, we kind of do have the government doing supposedly what's going to be in our best interest.
Well, you'd hope,
right? And it's not direct. It's through our voting to get someone you think is going to hopefully make decisions that'll be for the greater good while they're there, right? And that's kind of the goal. So if you start getting more and more people in there that want to take more of that away, then that's what you'll see if you think that's for the greater good in that community, right? As long as, again, people still stay engaged with the process. If you get people just not voting and people being disenfranchised because their votes don't count as much because of the way districts are drawn and all that kind of shit.
Or because politicians are just like kissing ass to, you know, lobbyists and corporate interests.
Absolutely.
You know, that's no longer, that's them.
Yeah.
Well, and that's part of this book. It's like we needed a revamp of society.
Yeah.
You know, the governments were corrupt. They were money oriented. They didn't give a shit about the best interest of the well-being of the people. Juvenile delinquents were all over the streets. No parents had stopped disciplining their children, and they were running wild because they didn't have any consequence. So in the book, they are also very pro corporal punishment and capital punishment. And so this is an interesting quote that I got from it. He's like, juvenile delinquents is an oxymoron. Juvenile delinquents don't exist because the term delinquent, the definition of the term delinquent is a failure of duty. Children don't have duty.
Yeah.
Parents have duty to raise their children right.
Yeah,
so for every kid who's acting out and out on the streets being a predator or whatever, there's 2 delinquent people involved, and it's his mother and father because they didn't check him when he was young enough to check that out of him, right? Yeah. And the people that should be held responsible are the people higher up the ladder. Same thing in the basic training in this, the young guys that get washed out or ended up having to be flogged. The officers were the ones that were responsible because they didn't train that guy well enough, so he didn't behave the way that was going to get him flogged, right? And so who's responsible for that? You would say, okay, so if we're expected to have duty as citizens, shouldn't our government give us the knowledge on why we should care about our community? You know, instead of just saying, these are the laws, obey them. Well, give us reasons. Educate us, because we're living in a society that increasingly people don't give a shit about their responsibility to everybody else. It's I, me, and mine. Give me my car, give me my money. I guess capitalism is part of that, right? So yeah, and so he's like, maybe if you paddled a dog on the floor the entire time it's growing up because you don't want to traumatize it, When it's an adult and you try and check it from shitting on the floor, it's too late.
Just had some weird crash happen, and it says it's still recording, but it's picking up.
We're
Right
good?
into my
We're recording?
project I'm working on.
Well, that's
that
just...
I'll intervene them too.
Okay, so we
3,
were talking
4.
about I think we were talking about the dogs shitting on the floor.
Sure.
So the one of the guy's teachers, he asks, how do you train a puppy, right? If it's shitting on the floor, what do? You give it a paddle, you give it a timeout. It's faster because it's a puppy. Will realize that poop and the paddling go together. Don't do that. Go where it's supposed to go. Now, if you never train the dog to do that its whole life, you just gave it positive reinforcement. Good for doing it in the right place and nothing when it did it in the wrong place. When it's an adult and it's still shitting on the floor, how do you check it? It's far too late because all of that imprinting is already done. So maybe checking kids when they're young enough without this culture of never really punish a child. Let them do whatever they want because, that maybe that career.
Okay, what's funny is I don't know why this got me on this tangent, but just the not having a concept of consequences, like a physical consequences. I just saw this video of this kid who's buddies with those Paul kids, like Logan Paul and the fuck's the other one's name? Jake Paul, yeah, they're both like boxing and shit. Now they're internet kids. Everybody in the world knows who they are, but
Except me.
But you, yeah, right. Jake and Logan Paul. Anyways, I just watched this little clip of this kid they know coming over to their house and kind of being like, "Hey, I'm going to box Jake," and like Jake just fought Tyron Woodley, who was a former welterweight champion in the UFC. Like, kid can box, like he's a big fucking strong.
Is that
kid.
that blonde guy?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so these kids come over to his house, and the other kid, like, I mean, they might have been the same age. Like, they could all been 26.
Like 20s? Okay.
But, like, the fucking one kid didn't look a day over 17 that was like, yeah, I'm going to box Jake over this thing. And, like, they got a boxing ring at their house, and he's got waivers set up. He's got a personal trainer because he's boxing to go and make money, right? And people are still coming by being like, hey, Jake, hey, you want to fucking box? Or whichever one. So... it was Jake. So Jake, the kid's getting ready, and they're like, "Hey, are you nervous?" He's like, "No, I'm not nervous. I can do this." And he's like, "But I'm kind of thinking maybe I don't even really know what I'm getting myself into, so I don't even know what to be scared of." And he punched this fucking kid so fucking hard. Like, he kind of boxed him a bit, and then he hit him with a clean right, and then just this dirty left hook, and then another one, and he was rattled, and like he kept going for a little bit, but like he beat the brakes off this kid, and the kid had he'd never been punched before. He had
Lost his legs.
No idea what was. Well, he didn't know how to fight back. He didn't know how to do nothing. But it was just seeing him before being like, well, what's the big deal? I'm going to do this, and then him even having the clarity of being like, I guess maybe I don't even know what should be worried about, and then just like the reality smashing him in the face, and he's like, oh fuck, that's what that feels like, and it's like, yeah, that's the extreme version of that. Like,
well, I think that's going to happen.
The bit of the physical struggle in the world to see the consequences of your actions.
Yeah, consequences are a very fucking real thing. Like all these Second Amendment survivalists, I think would be very disappointed without rule of law. You know what I mean? Like, they like to talk a lot of shit about what they're going to do when the shit hits the fan. When I don't think they have a goddamn clue what they're going to do when the shit hits the fan.
And they keep putting it all over YouTube and shit, and everybody's going to find out where they're at.
Well,
it's like, I need a supply to keep me going during the apocalypse. I know a guy.
Well, there's
the whole time.
There's a lot of people in large urban centers that have been living without. And they got their hands on Glocks and, AK-47s, and they learned how to live without. They just learned how to take it. And all of these, like, privileged white dudes with their AR-15s that figured that they're suddenly militia with no military training, that have never been caught in the bush for a week, without, with a pocket knife. They don't know what they're going to do when those, like, gangbangers roll into their hoods. Oh, yeah, I know how to do this. No, you don't. You don't know how to do this. These guys know how to do this. Again, the last couple of weeks I've been reading like a motherfucker. That's kind of one of my program things is that I'm conditioned too much to my phone and to that fast, steady scrolling. So I'm focusing on changing my brain pattern up and focusing on reading. And literally it's everything against what I want to do.
It's a slower absorption.
100%. It doesn't go with my ADHD. I have to sit down and focus on focusing, So I've been reading, and I'm finding as long as I read stuff that I find very interesting, it's going to go well, right? Like, what was it? The Starship Troopers, for example, was really good. I've got Catch Me If You Can that I'm going to be working on, that Frank Abagnale story where he was like a total fraudster. But I also read another book called The Ballad of Danny Wolf. And Danny Wolf was a young indigenous kid, and his brother Richard Wolf, that grew up in Winnipeg and eventually founded the Indian Posse Street Gang. And it goes through their entire life until Danny Wolf was murdered in PA Penitentiary. And it's hardcore. It's a window into what happens in central Canada in a culture that I guess most people that be listening to this podcast would never know. And
most people sitting in this podcast.
No, 100%.
I had no idea. You
I've
know
met
what I mean?
gangbangers,
Outside
but not to
looking
that
in,
level.
Yeah, man, that's fucking wild.
And this guy, like, straight up 14 drive-by shootings, one confirmed strangulation in jail, like, you know, with like a T-shirt to a murder. Like the guy had probably, I think, 15, 16 murders under his belt by the time he was murdered in PA, and his prison psychologist basically explains that this kid's life, with the abuse and the neglect and the alcohol that surrounded him growing up, and he hit the streets, and he was basically surviving by robbing and stealing food and sleeping wherever he was warm enough. His entire upbringing was basically a checklist of what is necessary to create a sociopath. There was no option for this kid but to become a predator as he grew up. And the question gets raised, how do you interject into that guy's life as an adult or a young adult or a late teen, you know, after 16 years old, and say you could change your life around?
Yeah.
Can you?
There's not a high success rate of
No.
that. More of it is getting when they're 7 and 8 years old in minor ball and
Some-
you know, just as one program, you know, but like different programs where kids can get into and do shit.
Positive activity that creates
gives you
community.
direction. Yeah,
Because-
friendships, all that kind of stuff keeps you from fucking.
Otherwise, like, these kids are on the street. If you're 12 years old, 10 years old at 2 in the morning in your urban environment, who's going to scoop you up and give you direction? You know, the local drug dealer or the local predator? You know, these are the two major
It turns out
options.
it's the same guy.
Yeah, or the same guy, you know.
We got a real fucking efficient community involvement with our predators.
And they're going to teach them to be predators to survive, because that's what you need to do when you don't have that support network. And there's another good book. I forget the guy's name. Indian Ernie. He was a cop in Saskatoon. He wrote the book Indian Ernie, and book 2, More Tales from Indian Ernie. And it's his reflections on policing as an Indigenous officer in Saskatoon. And he gives you a window into the underbelly that most people aren't aware of happening in this city. You know, keeping people hostage and bringing your son back day after day after day to show you how to abuse a woman, you know, and she's a hostage in this house. And this happens. It never hits the news because nobody wants to know about that side of reality in Winnipeg, Regina, Saskatoon. But it's there. It's really there, and it's happening to people regularly. So how do you interject into that society that is like so damaged, so damaged? We talk about truth and reconciliation. How can you reconcile something that's been destroyed, right? I guess part of it would be learning the truth and reading books like this, you know, and learning about the residential schools and the Indian Act and all of that stuff. But how do we as a society reconcile our duty as settlers, as functional people in, you know, Western culture?
Who's functional?
You know, I'm able to hold down a job, you know, I'm able to pay rent, I'm able to have food on my you know, despite my relative, you know, we joke around like, oh yeah, we've had some pretty rough upbringing. Nothing compared to your mom walking away when you're 8 and your brother's, you know, 6, and seeing her walk down the street and just like, fend for yourself, kids. I'm off to party for the next 6 years, you know, and they just like survive, right? So yeah, I think that well, you know, and that's part of our society, and I think we need to look at it and really bring into context the effect that has on our system, whether it's social workers or people trying to, you know, the police, people trying to help, right? And just looking like it's an uphill battle. What is it? The guy pushes the boulder up the mountain, and the mountain doesn't stop, and the boulder doesn't stop, right? So yeah, it's very interesting stuff to pay attention to. And I've been reading a lot on this stuff and just kind of coming up with, you say it's cultish, like, you know, the program, you know, but, you know, I'm really, you know, I guess maybe there needs to be a new model to reach people that the language of the past hasn't really reached.
Well,
right?
cult talk right here.
A lot of cult
that
talk.
That is dear
right?
leader talk if I've ever heard it. The language of the past.
Well, it is like straight up like the social workers, the preachers, the politicians haven't really offered opportunities for people that feel disenfranchised by this system. And what was gangs and drug dealing and street life and all of that. What are you checking out there?
Well, I think the button says Jurassic Queer.
Yeah, that's just from my daughter. She gave me a Jurassic Queer button.
That sounds about right, yeah.
Yeah. So even here, the lowrider flash, they got a guy who's being, sent to jail, another guy who's in jail. No shame in my game, guys smoking meth on these flash sheets. These are tattoo designs. these are straight up tattoo designs from East LA.
Immortalize my pastimes and my tattoos.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. A lot of that black and gray. Well, people forget this all the time. That like tattoo culture, black and gray tattooing, as we know it, the fine line. That's all jail. That all originated in the Southern California jail system from like the Cholo gangs, where they only had ash and a single needle in order to do tattooing. And then it hit the streets, and these guys created a style, and people are like, oh, I like that look. And now I want to get my granddaughter's name in that fancy script with a drop shadow, maybe a teardrop. Right? Can I get the teardrop on my eye?
I know she's going to be a murderer.
So
God. Sorry, that just reminded me of a terrible meme I'd seen.
Terrible meme?
Fucking...
Is there such thing?
What's his goddamn name? This has been a solid one for me not being able to remember anything. Alec Baldwin accidentally shooting one of his cast... Well, two of his cast members.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shit happens.
I was like, yeah. No, that just the teardrop
remember
thing
Brandon
reminded me
Lee
of
in
that. 'Cause
The
I'd seen that. Yeah. Well, it's so rare that it happened, or that you hear about it, I guess, that like somebody gets killed on a movie set like that with live ammunition. Like,
Yeah,
it's like
was it
such a
live?
Weird,
Okay.
From what I heard, but I didn't really fucking look into it. I just seen the thing and I was like, oh, that sucks.
Yeah, I heard about that. And when The Crow was being filmed, Brandon Lee, he in a big gunfight, I guess live ammunition made it into a prop gun or something, and somebody got shot and murdered. And I don't know what happened with Alec Baldwin. It could have been a clogged barrel with like dirt or something like that.
Well, and like I've heard that sometimes,
There were live rounds in the gun.
there were
So
live
who
rounds.
put them there?
We're still trying to figure that out.
like-
Jesus Christ,
We're
that's
investigating the assistant director that handed him the gun right now, and the armorer that handles the weapons.
You can't think that's a mistake. You know what I mean? Like, how does live ammunition ever get anywhere near a movie set? Why would you ever need it?
I got a wacky idea that why aren't the barrels filled? You could just put a rivet through that barrel. All the flames from blanks come flying out the end, and if a real bullet was in there, it would just blow up the hand of the person shooting it instead of murdering somebody. These are prop guns, or they should be prop
They're
guns.
supposed to, they're supposed to. It's not real aliens. You know what I mean? It's supposed to look like aliens. You're supposed to be convinced.
Well,
you don't need a real gun.
I guess that's also a commentary on a culture which is glorifying gun violence in their films
Well, and then it has
all
to
the
be
time.
so realistic, hey, that it's like you can't see a corked end of a gun barrel because, well, no, that's not realistic.
doesn't
Yeah,
look
but it's a
right,
movie.
And-
None of this is real. Of course, it's not realistic.
But, it's a good point. We're desensitizing ourselves to gun violence all the time. And then when, accidentally somebody got shot with a gun. Oh, my God, that's so horrific.
Yeah.
Like in the USA.
The reason they had the gun to begin with is because the movie was about shooting people with guns.
Yes.
It was a Western.
Yes. Oh, was it a Western?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess maybe there was a time and place in history where that shit went on, But now you got like movies like Heat, where there's this huge gun battle going
Now,
on in this.
that movie came out in 97.
Well, okay.
Now you've got these brand new movies like Heat.
What's the latest Jason Statham when? Okay, John Wick or Jason Statham when he's like
Bill
the
Cosby.
crazy.
What's he been up to? Is there anything new? Just kidding. Yeah. Can't joke around about action movies. Okay, fine.
Yeah, exactly. Well, okay, so you got a culture that glorifies violence. Like that. I was gonna say that last Jason Statham movie that he's like an armored car guy and they just blow away like people after people after
Is that
people.
good?
It's pretty good.
I was gonna watch it. It looked good.
But I like Guy Ritchie movies.
Fuck yeah, man.
He's
English
kind of got
gangster shit.
Gangster shit and a little bit of a pulse on the underworld.
Ever
Not
seen
real
Layer
underworld.
Cake?
Yes.
It's pretty good.
The Layer Cake. Revolver is one of my favorite ones because it's a commentary on the ego, which is kind of an interesting. It's like an action crime movie, but it's all basically talking about the ego.
Who's the star in that?
Jason Statham, and there's
know
I
I've
think
seen it, I just
Ray
can't
Liotta is in there, and you got a phone call going on, man.
Yeah, it's gonna just continue
Fuck mom.
forever.
What was it?
Probably good news.
Well, it's okay.
That's all I ever get is good news.
That's all I ever get is good news. I was discussing this. I have a friend, and he's kind of on this ACAB kind of angle, like fuck the cops, defund the police, this and that and the other thing. And I'm like, okay, cool. And we started talking about the other day. I got a Creeps account deactivated from Instagram. I'm involved with a lot of alternative philosophy stuff, and some of them are spooky people, and some of them like are pretty alt-right leaning black metal people, you know, and some of those black metal people are kind of like the Satanist crowd. And if you want that rabbit hole, you just go on to one guy's profile and you look at who's commenting what on some of his more extreme photos, and who the fuck is this guy? You click on his profile. Well, I went pretty far into fucking I don't know what kind of place.
So deep you found people you knew?
No, I found a guy who was posting children in bondage on his. Great. No, it wasn't great, and like other things that were very, very. Even I find offensive. Even I, because I'm such a degenerate. No, that. So I just said, "Fuck it, I'm going to report every single one of these photos. I'm going to pull that Karen move." And Buddy's profile got taken down, right? And they gave me an announcement. Oh, Buddy's profile got taken down. So I clicked in his name. No, he just started another one. You got the one deactivated and he started another one. So I was having this discussion with my buddy about, you know, the dark web and what's out there and some of the things that we've seen on sites like 4chan. And he's kind of a hacker guy, so he's seen a lot more disgusting things than me. And even this guy's Instagram account, before I got it deleted, was pretty triggering for me, right? So this guy's telling me about some of the stuff that he's seen on the dark web. And I'm like, I've seen like 2 or 3 images on 4chan from the dark web that I cannot unsee. They're branded in my brain. I won't even discuss them.
I'm making a face right now.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, it's just like, holy fuck. And there's a generation or a culture of people that really get off on sharing and selling and you know, propagating this imagery, whether it's child stuff or atrocity stuff or gore. And he pointed out that there's people on Facebook that have legitimate PSD because they're employed by Facebook, and they are the people that say this cannot be put on Facebook.
No, they get to see all the terrible shit.
Yes,
sure.
yes. And and right now, Apple is coming up. I guess Ashton Kutcher and Apple are working together on a program that Apple will automatically go through your photos and run them through an algorithm to see if there's nudity, and then they have to go through another filter, whether it's a human filter or another computer filter, to see if children are involved, to you know, flag stuff that. And some people are like, well, this is a real challenge to our freedoms, you know, especially in the fetish community. Like, oh my God, I do all this stuff, and now they're going to be looking at our gear and now or our content. But then on the other hand is like, who's protecting society? Right. And my buddy, who's the hacker, he's like, well, man, you know, we did a hunt for predators with like the dark web stuff. And we found the sites and the people that were, you know, looking to connect and all of that. And we turned them in straight up. And it's funny because he's like, well, you know, it'd be really good if like there was like a line in society to protect society from that darkness. And I know the word evil has gone out of style. You know, what is evil? Well, you know, okay. I'd like to think anybody who's going to harm somebody who cannot protect themselves for their own selfish want meets the criteria. So he's like, boy, if there was just a line, you know, somebody who was prepared to deal with the monsters. I'm like, yeah, we call them cops.
They had some training, maybe you gave them a gun.
Yeah, and they believe in right and wrong.
Find them in a crowd.
Yeah, you know, exactly. You know,
up.
If somebody else has a gun, we let them have guns, you know. But you have to be careful when you battle monsters that you don't become a monster yourself.
And that's like a whole different thing, dealing with the chomos. I was watching the child molesters.
Oh,
I was listening to a fucking podcast, and they were talking with I can't remember the guy's name is, but he does the Catch a Predator, the Catch a Predator guy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And he was talking with these people, and he was just like it's pathological for them. Like the people that they were catching, like you said, the one guy, they were ill prepared when they were first doing it because they weren't really sure like if it was going to work, if anybody would show up.
How many people are really
like
out there?
A lineup? Like the guy, he's going to be maybe 40 minutes late, and they're like, you got to get here right now. We got guys coming around, and they can't see the other guys coming in and out. And then for the first couple, like they didn't have cops or anything there, and they just had like the online conversations with these guys. They're just going to confront them, and then so a bunch of them were just like, oh, okay, well, see you later, I guess.
I'm out.
Because they're like, we can't do anything, can't keep me here. And there was nobody here, and you can say that's what I was here for, but that's your word against mine, and blah, blah, blah. So whatever, they'd fucking leave. Well, he said, so like one of the guys that really made an impact on him, this guy, they caught him the first time around, and then ended up catching him again in a McDonald's parking lot like the next day.
He just went and kept trolling.
Yeah, because he was just, oh, okay. But then this time they had cops and they had shit sorted out and like ready to fucking go. So
now you're on a list
picked him up and yeah.
See, yeah, fuck, man. I found this video and I shared it. Fuck it, I don't care. This guy. Well, I'm like, what?
I don't know what I keep looking at. I keep
right at the cameras that aren't
looking
running.
at you. It's like,
Yeah.
well, I'm in a slight angle. Even doesn't make any sense.
Basically, a guy had intercepted. I guess a chomo. Fuck, that's a good one.
Chomo, yeah, it makes me laugh a little.
I like disgusting degeneriate creep who had arranged.
Come on, chomo.
Yeah, it's such an affectionate nickname for them. Skinners that had arranged to try to meet his 12 or 13-year-old daughter. And the guy showed up with his 2 Cane Corsos instead and said, get him. And this guy's rolling around on the ground trying to get away from the dogs, chewing the shit out of him. Like, I think this is an appropriate, you like to be, in power? Okay, here you go. Here are my dogs, right? And it's funny because Starship Troopers, right? What's a consequence to something like that? 4 steps and a 4-foot fall. There you go. You're taken care of. We hang people that do that kind of thing. And actually, in the book, they do address. One of their soldiers goes AWOL, and he's trying to live outside of the grid because you can't be AWOL in that society. And it ends up that he kidnaps a girl and kills a girl. For trying to get money to survive, and the army just wants him back. It's our guy. We'll take care of it. Sorry that it's one of ours, and he did this, and all they do is hang him. There you go. It's not a problem anymore, right? You could have left and you could have lived in shame in society, but don't do that. Don't do that. And if you do that, this is a consequence of your actions. So, yeah, I don't know. I think we need to be funding the police in the right ways. And I think we really need to be healing. I think I talked about it in the last...
fun in the funding.
In the funding?
Yeah. Make it lighter, you know what I mean?
No.
Lighten them up. Everybody's lighten up a little bit.
Lighten up the cops. Well, okay, how many bad situations you got to roll into to see, before this stuff affects you? So if
one probably.
Right.
Most people, the first time you see something gnarly, you're like, oh, fuck.
Yeah.
It's after the 50th where it doesn't affect you.
that you probably have
minorly.
Needed. Yeah, well, and that's just it. And
again, I still feel like all of this is all like, it's all at the child level.
Child level?
Everything's at all the intervention, all that shit, it has to be done. Because it's like, you want to lighten the load on cops, we got to do better with kids.
Yes. 100%.
Lighten the load on the fucking education system or the judicial system.
But who's going to do it?
We got to do better with kids.
Maybe if we established a school that we took away kids at risk and we just put them in these big schools. Right? Oh, wait.
I don't know if more indoctrination is...
That didn't work. I think that damaged people. Maybe if they were run by legitimately compassionate individuals instead of chomos with crosses.
Yeah.
I'm totally incorporating that one in. Yeah, it's easy and catchy.
Christina P's show to your mom's house.
Yeah, I don't know, because that's the thing. Like, we've created a system that's full of monsters by the attempt.
Yeah, Russ.
By the attempt to eliminate monsters. We want to make these people good Christians, so we destroy their culture and their language and their family, and then
it's all good intentions, right?
Yeah.
Road to hell is paved with what again?
Yeah.
Good intentions.
Christians.
Oh, Christians. I've never heard that interpretation of that.
No. I was just spitballing there.
We're just saying the first thing that comes to our mind, right? Hot dogs.
Yeah, I know. I was like, fuck. I guess maybe it's just the books I've been reading, that are very heavy topics.
Well, that's what I like about you, Pat, is because you were like, I'm tired of all this fucking being bombarded with the internet bullshit. I got to slow down and ingest some things properly. Let me find something that's really going to fuel my hatred so it's like a deep, dark coal inside me that festers over hours of being inside this.
I think that might be a bit of an exaggeration.
I'm exaggerating slightly. But I just think that's funny. It's like, I want to get away from all this negativity. I want to focus on one really negative thing and that's it. I don't want 30 negative things coming at me. I want one and that's it.
Well, I've always been a half-empty cup kind of guy. And, and I guess I see things and I'm like, boy, I wish that wasn't like that. How can we fix it? And I increasingly, I don't see avenues of fixing a lot of these social issues.
I think you're doing a bunch of it already.
Yeah, I'm trying. For me, I'm trying to improve my life.
And that's what it is. Because that's when most people, that's when it gets better. Because when it's like your shit's all going good and you don't have all these other things. Because I think most people almost can't help everybody else around them. They just got too much shit to deal with. Their shit sucks too bad. Their arthritis sucks. They're broke. All the fucking, their car needs tires. We all fucking got that. So most of us, it's just we got enough bullshit to deal with on our own that barely getting by and being okay, not pieces. That's what I was saying earlier. Like our requirement is to not contribute to the garbage, right? That's our minimum requirement. Is just don't be shitty. And for many of us, it's a difficult thing to do to just not be shitty when you deal with all the other stuff. But once you get all of those needs met, once you're more comfortable financially or socially or in a relationship wise, however that works for you in your community of what you do, wherever you're more comfortable, well, then that's when you start to grow and do all those things that get beyond just the bubble that is you that feels very fucking small and almost insignificant. But I think I think it's very hard for someone who is, again, struggling to make ends meet and shit to even
That's a good point.
think about that kind of stuff, because
That's 100%.
you have to be so focused on you to even feel like you're surviving, let alone thriving.
You cannot live in a system that's stopping you from meeting your basic survival needs and be expected to develop self-esteem. You know, that's basically my angle on it. Like, if I can't have a roof over my head and I can't have food on my plate, how can you expect me to be a great human being?
No.
I'm doing what I need to survive, whether it's like stealing from 7-Eleven and risking going to jail, or, you know, like food.
Yeah,
like,
right.
you know, so
Gotta get fed.
Yeah, I think that's just it. And until we can start securing people, which kind of leads to that socialist idea, until we can secure people or guarantee them their basic human survival needs, they're never going to be able to, you know, feel safe and secure. They're never going to feel love and compassion. They're never going to feel part of a community.
Well, and I do think most people's vision of a utopian future may, like, and there may be lots of people that include some sort of form of capitalism in it by all means, where you yourself could earn unlimited wealth, but there's at least a baseline that's met for everybody. There's never a fucking person sleeping on a sidewalk. There's in any picture of a utopian future, I don't think anybody pictures it still with homeless people, right?
But how can we afford to send people to space?
If
we're feeding people and giving them places to live,
yeah, you had my next part of how we do that exactly.
billionaires won't be able to go to space.
Less dick-shaped rockets.
Yeah.
That's what they're called, right?
Rockets.
Holy fuck.
Yeah, so I guess that's a part of it, and it's heartbreaking. And, you know, like, I don't know. I blame the rich a lot. I really believe in taxing the rich a lot.
Well, I'd seen an interesting thing talking about Dolly Parton, actually, and they were saying, like, Dolly Parton's not a billionaire. She could be a fucking billionaire.
Yes.
But she gives a fuck pile of her money away and invests it into things that do community things. Like there's a lot of philanthropy that goes along with her money, and she still got more fucking money than one Dolly Parton could spend in a lifetime.
That's exactly it. Once you get to a billionaire point, I think everything else should just be public good.
Fuck, $500 million.
Yeah, you're gonna run out.
A lot of goddamn money.
You're gonna run out.
A lot of goddamn money.
Yeah. You got 50 years left in your life.
Yeah. Right.
That's only $50 million a year. Can
Yeah.
you survive on that? I don't know. Yeah. Is that worth it out?
No, it's not.
I'm not good at math.
I didn't want to say anything. I'm
not good
just
at
let
math.
it slide. Nobody else listening to this knows math anyways.
Yeah.
But,
well, it's like the other day when I said that in 1993, I spoke about the LA riots, and I'm like, that was 91. Don't be and I said it very clearly, like 3 or 4 times. In 1993, I'm like, no, it wasn't.
So fun. Even funnier if you did, though. Like 2 years later, you're just like, and you know what the fuck's going on right now
down there.
24 months ago? Yeah.
The movie Heat just came out. Yeah. So, have you seen what's going on in society right now? Yeah. There's a lot to be said for being a bit of a throwback and off of, a lot of the popular social media and not watching the news. You know, I get to sit in my echo chamber of the books I read, and
That's funny, man. Throwback.
Fucking
more like
atavist.
More like a throw out.
Yeah. Have you read Ted Kaczynski's article? Yeah. It's really good. There's a graphic novel of industrial society and its future that came out, and it's basically the Unabomber Manifesto.
Is that what his manifesto was called?
Yeah, industrial society and its future. And unfortunately, it's pretty on point. It's a little repetitive. It's pretty repetitive, but it's funny because there's one part in there. He's like, and sure, I could get this published somewhere by somebody, but nobody would read it. So radical actions were necessary in order for you to pay attention to my writing. And he just killed 3 people.
Oh, it was just like a book promotion tour.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, boom, boom, boom. Okay, you guys want me to stop bombing people? Publish my writing. And then,
makes sense.
That being said, I would have never read it if it wasn't for him being the Unabomber.
Forward thinking.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. I think change in culture that needs to happen fast and yesterday is a lot of people are giving it lip service. And they're like, oh, yeah, who was it? I think it was Saudi Arabia said that they plan to be net neutral or carbon neutral by 2060.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. And in 40 years, we should have our shit straight. Yeah. By that time, like, you will be living in fucking a desert. Well, they're already in a fucking desert. But, like, you know.
More of a desert.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to be living in an environmental hellscape in 40 years if you don't do it yesterday. You know, but congratulations on your news release to make everybody fucking happy that you said the right words, carbon neutral, and everybody's going to pat you on the back and say, good for them, they're doing the job. They said the words. Yeah. Doing the job and said the words without really making any real change, right? You can say the words and everybody's fucking happy.
Doing the job and said the words. Mm-hmm. It's funny because as you were talking about that, I was just picturing just like out loud, just being like, I realize this. And then you're like, okay, I'm done. I did my realization. What's the next thing?
Yeah, I don't have to work on it.
I realize this now. Nope, said it out loud. That's it, you know?
Mm-hmm. Remember when we decided, like, we were walking the dogs and, like, we should do a podcast. I'm like, did we just say it? Does that mean we're obligated to do it now? I think we should go do a podcast, you know?
Yeah, that is some of that manifestation shit. It does work sometimes, but I think they're missing the other steps that involve, like the buying the microphones and the getting the rustle. You know
getting the rustle.
There's a couple extra steps on top of the saying it out loud till you're actually... I hope entertaining at least somebody. Damn.
So I saw, speaking of lip service to the popular causes versus real news, I saw a whole bunch of memes popping around, and congratulations to the USA. They just promoted their first transgendered admiral into I think it's one of the forces. I don't know which branch. And at the same time, nobody was talking about the fact that China did a test of a nuke that the USA can't track. That didn't really hit the news very much. So, but the transgendered admiral was very, very important news for Western culture. But the fact that China created an intercontinental ballistic missile that they can launch that does a full orbit of the Earth before plopping down within 12 miles of its target.
That's not ideal.
That's not news.
Around the Earth?
Yeah. Well, nobody will be able to defeat this intercontinental missile except the transgendered admiral. So that's the important news of the day. This is what I see happening in Western culture, you know, that the important things aren't being discussed, but the trendy things are being discussed. And it's really weird that anybody I talk to about this ICBM from China is like, what? That's a thing? And it completely bypasses all of their early warning signs for defense against this missile. So China just won the nuclear arms race if they decide that they want to take out, you know, most of North America, because they can't track it when it goes around the other side of the planet and drops back in. And they're like, we didn't know. Of course you fucking didn't know, because you're too preoccupied with bullshit, you know? Like putting Afghan withdrawal on the news, you know? Okay, cool. You surrendered. You left. Cool. That other side on the other side of the planet is now given up to the Al-Qaeda, you know, to a theocratic religious state that believes in second-class citizenship for women and death sentence for homosexuals, and children can be used as sex slaves, and because that's halal. That's okay, you know, and let's let everybody know that, but not that part. And China is launching this crazy nuke. Yeah, that's great. That's great. And ecological disaster.
Sound good.
No, it doesn't sound good. That isn't great. That isn't great. But congratulations. Congratulations on equity and equality in the services. And
you can still have both. You can have equality and be fucked.
And be functional as a military, you know, force to protect, you know, North America. Because that's basically it. You know, as Canadians, we're pretty dependent on their system, as much as we don't want to admit it, you know. It'd be nice if they were, functional. Mm-hmm. But I have a trans friend who, on a related note, that isn't to disparage trans people. She recommended that I watch a really good documentary on Netflix called Disclosure. Yes, Disclosure. And it talks about trans representation in popular media and Hollywood. And we were joking about Silence of the Lambs before we came on.
We were not.
We were joking about Buffalo Bill and dancing in a mirror and I would fuck me hard. Remember those words?
The first I've heard of it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, there's a character in Silence of the Lambs. And
punishing me for my being obtuse. Uh-huh. Well done.
Yeah. He is a serial killer. And apparently he's not really transgendered. He thinks he is, and his whole trip is skinning women and taking their skins to make a female suit, which is based off of a real murderer, Ed Gein. And but that is one of those narratives or one of those ongoing conversations. Oh, this is what trans people are. They're like Buffalo Bill in that movie Silence of the Lambs, you know, or any of these movies where they dress up. And it's
I think most car mechanics are murderers, just like Michael Myers as well. It is a bit of a leap to me. I understand that if they're like, well, that's the only time we ever see trans people in here is you got to make them skinning people and they're serial killers. I don't know if that's fair.
Well, see, okay, and case in point, I don't think we're hearing a lot of the black voices that talk about the representation of black people in film for the last, I don't know, 100 years. Yeah. That, you know, the criminals, the gangsters, the pimps, the bad guys in white guy movies for a long time until just recently within the last 10 or 15 years. I think there's no shortage of misrepresentation in popular media.
Well, sorry, that just reminded me of a lot of people were upset about the movie Split. And about how it
stigmatized mental health.
Yeah. And one of his personalities could throw a car, though. So, I mean, I don't know if it's an accurate representation of people with mental illness to begin with.
Well,
you know what I mean? That you're going to be making that. They're like, you know, he stigmatizes it. The dude climbed the wall like a spider too. Like, I don't know what to tell you. It's not based in reality.
Is Bruce Willis's character, you know, a stigmatization of like baseball security guards?
That's the fragility of the old white man right there.
Yeah,
hey?
it's like, well, that's her superhero.
I'll constantly take a beating and I'll come back for more, you pieces. I'll give you what you need because that's what I'm here for.
Clint Eastwood.
I'm just a white man.
Yeah.
That's what he was playing, I think.
That is, that's the audience. That
yeah.
is the audience.
But I guess get offended about whatever you want to get offended about. But
well, in Glass, what was it, Mr. Glass?
Yeah.
That's the fragility of the Black American. You know, it's very fragile.
Yeah.
You know, no, I don't buy a lot of this.
Yeah.
You know,
and that is not also the symbolism. Yeah.
If you wanted to look into
M. Night
there,
Shyamalan explains it.
You know, you can use whatever your convoluted semantic games or whatever you want to try to put meaning on something.
Well, and this is more of this, like, when the fuck was Silence of the Lambs made? 91?
It was a long time.
You know what I mean? Like that again. It's based on a book that was written before that. You're gonna by today's standard, standard, you're right. If you're gonna continue to make movies like this, you should probably be more sensitive to it by all means.
Well, sensitivity.
Well, and I mean, and to me, being sensitive to something is being aware of it. Being aware, being conscious, try not to do harm. If your intention is to not do harm and you're being conscious, then it's fine. If you're intentionally causing harm, then that's something you need to fucking reevaluate.
Well, it depends, right? Because what's the definition of harm and who gets to say what is harmful? Is it the most easily damaged and the most fragile among us?
No, I think it depends on the person creating the art. What was their intention? Okay. It's not those that interpret it get to decide what the intention is of the art. The artist gets to decide what the intention of the art is.
So, and that's a slippery slope because since our last conversation, I watched The Closer.
Yeah,
with Dave Chappelle.
Yeah,
and this has that's where I got the recommendation to watch Disclosure, The Closer, Disclosure, where I got the recommendation because I posted that, hey, I watched this documentary, or I watched this comedy special by Dave Chappelle, and 3/4 of it, not just like a quarter, 3/4 of it is talking about his relationship with the trans community and what he's been accused of and his real feelings. And I came away thinking, well, he did take some pot shots at low-hanging fruit, but the vast majority of what he talked about wasn't hateful. It wasn't transphobic. It was him expressing his view as somebody who's been an advocate for social justice in the black community for most of his career to suddenly be called a bigot.
Well, and that's what I got too, is that he felt slighted by not even any of the trans stuff, is that he was trying to stand up for black people, you know? And he's like, which again, that's his own trip, and that's fucking between them. I have no dog in that fight.
Well, I do. Because I love Dave Chappelle. I've watched almost all of his specials. Every single episode of The Chappelle Show I've watched multiple times. I used to have it on DVD. And his commentary on white privilege and what we take for granted and cracking jokes on white culture made me review my own behavior and my own outlook a ton. I'd be like, wow, white people do act like that. And maybe that's something I need to check. I was able to accept the criticism in his commentary and put that to self-work. Now, why can't other communities take those jokes and say, wow, this is a legitimate criticism of what we're doing. And maybe I need to consider that. Instead of saying, I'm offended and you need to stop saying the things that offend me, say, what hits home? Why am I offended? What do I need to work on? Or was it just, you fucking suck? You fucking suck.
Well, but I can understand like the victim's point of view too, if they feel like they have a victim mentality to begin with, and that anything that is considered criticism can't be truthful because it's always going to be a slight or a joke or a jab at the end of it. So then they're going to have barriers up. I get that, but like,
okay,
to some degree,
you understand
if you're the victim mentality, absolutely, someone who either was or feels as though they've been victimized, and they see the circumstances under which they think those you were bullied, joking around, growing up, and then you see somebody making jokes when you get older, and you think that they're just trying to bully me again, without analyzing it, without getting any deeper, without maybe even really hearing the words. You just see the thing that looks like that thing again. And you're immediately like, well, fuck, I'm just going to react to that. And I totally get that. I identify with that. I just think that it's once you're aware of it, you have to do like everyone else who's ever been a victim of anything in their childhood, whether it was alcoholism from your parents or bullying from kids at school. Once you're aware of it and you're trying to gain control over it, you can't then continue to make it a crutch for your knee-jerk reactions to what everybody else around you says. You have to then be responsible for it because you've fucking become aware of it. Until you're aware of it, you can't really do anything about it. Once you're aware of it, just like any other kind of abuse, then you go, okay, well, I have to, as much as it's somebody else's fault or what they did to me, I have to be responsible for how I go forward now knowing that.
That's exactly it.
And I don't think there's a lot of that step being had in those circumstances.
You have to be able to discern whether something is a legitimate attack on you or if something has offended potentially fragile ego boundaries that have said, well, I've been teased about this thing, so that's a bit of an issue for me. And now whenever that little open wound gets touched gently, it is registered as a big injury. You know, and that's just like a scar. You know, scar tissue is the same way. If you've had an open injury and somebody pokes that little area with a needle that wouldn't have hurt anywhere else on your body, but that little tiny injury is now bzzz. Well, that's exactly what we're talking about, where, okay, look at me. One of the things I was teased, in my opinion, fairly heavily about my weight when I was a kid. So now that's one of my things. It's like this body image issue and fat jokes and stuff like that. Even the word fat is a bit of a thing for me. I'm like, fuck. But that's me work to do. That's not the world work to do. That's a me thing, you know, and somebody can use the word and they don't even mean it offensively, but instinctively I'm just like, bang, ooh, that's an issue for me.
And it's about me.
It is. It's all about me.
When you said it, even though it was recorded 30 years ago and I wasn't around for it, but that is about me.
And well, and that's exactly it. And let's go dial it back to the Silence of the Lamb and the Buffalo Bill thing. That book was written a long time ago, and it was taken from a legitimate serial killer. Like the female body suits were made by a guy, well, not a serial killer, a necrophile, and like he was a ghoul, right? But Ed Gein,
well, Happy Halloween.
He killed 2 people or 3 people, but he would grave rob, and he would take the corpses and like strip them and or skin them and try and make human body, and that's what that character Buffalo Bill was based off of. But even in the books and in the movies, they made it clear that he wasn't transgendered, he wasn't transsexual. He was just a damaged, toxic individual that figured that this would fix him, you know? And that doesn't necessarily mean they're talking about trans people. But the other argument is, even though they're not talking about trans people, it influences society's view. And that is one of the characters that pops into their head when they say, oh, you want to be a woman? Oh, like Buffalo Bill?
Yeah.
Hey.
Well, there's probably many people that was their only, because if they weren't actively searching it out, where else do you see a bunch of
trans people or people
in mainstream media in the 90s like that? You know, and before that, I just don't remember it, honestly.
Well, yeah, exactly. But the other element is, like, I think that there's a movement towards fast-tracking acceptance, fast-tracking social change. Like, it needs to happen now, and if you're not doing it, you're a bigot. And I don't think that's fair, because how many years did it take for, I guess, positive roles for black people? How many years did it take for the gay people in movies to not just be the novelty joke character with, like, the exaggerated characteristics of flamboyant behavior and lisping and the whole nine, when they were just, hey, that's the gay character. Or that's the gay primary character. So now to say, well, we want all of that right now, even though we're a pretty contemporarily new community that's emerging.
That sound along the lines of one of the points Dave Chappelle was making as well. You know, it was, you know, he's like, because especially from his angle being black, you know, he's like, we got hundreds of years of this, you know, and then people took offense to that, being like, well, you didn't know there was trans people hundreds of years ago, and it's like,
because you're looking to be offended.
It's right, like it's not,
or a person.
that's not the point.
Not man.
What is the point,
dude?
You know,
gender neutral, dude. Come on, come on. Yeah, I don't know. I think we're living in, again, we say it almost every third or second episode, we're living in transitional times, period, across the board. And, you know, I think any transition, any evolution comes with pain and discomfort, right? Mm-hmm. And, you know, one way or the other, there might be the pain and discomfort of them saying, you know what, you guys are special needs. You are not, like 1 in 1,000 does not constitute 999 changing their behaviors for you. Or that we're living in transitional times where the vast majority has to learn to accommodate the small minorities within us, you know, as being obviously worthy of life and freedom and pursuit of happiness and all of those cliche things, right?
That's always been my thing about it. It's always seemed like it's been very basic stuff that's been wanted, that people are like, it's like, they want extra. And it's like, no, it sure seems like every malign group I've ever heard was like, nope, just the same as everybody else. Yeah. I don't want extra. I don't want more. And you know what? I don't even need the same as everybody else. Just don't give me the shit that you're giving me that no one else is getting. Yeah, you don't have to even treat me as well as you do your buddies. Just don't treat me like, once again, my prime directive, don't be shitty. Well, don't contribute to the shit.
That's exactly it. Can you treat me with common decency as a human being? You know, right. That's what it really boils down to. And that's what my take on social justice ever since I was old enough to listen to Dead Kennedys has always been. Can you treat people with common fucking dignity? You know, that's all you need to do. Treat them with respect as a human being until they prove to be a piece of shit. Now, and it doesn't matter who's being a piece of shit. If you're a piece of shit, you're a piece of shit. It doesn't matter what race, gender, creed, ethnicity, whatever you are, you know.
Shittiness knows no bounds.
Yeah, exactly. That's values is different than who you happen to identify as or what you were born as or anything like that. If your values are the same as mine, well, great, let's be buddies. If your values are completely diametrically opposite, you think that abusing children or sexism or racism or homophobia and all that stuff is okay, then we probably don't share a value system. You know, we could probably focus on the stuff we do get along with, but I'm going to have to put up a
screwdriver. You know, your shared love of screwdriver.
100%. I'm not even going to lie. Yeah, I've been doing a lot of inventory the last week or two. That band is still one of my favorites.
See, people see them as a divisive force. You can see them as a unifying force.
100%.
Of people that would like, you know what, I never agree with these views, but I sure do love that catchy beat.
Well, you know, there's about 5 songs I will outright skip.
Fair enough.
Out of an entire discography, 5 songs.
And I think that says a lot for a guy like you. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Just in general, I can picture you singing along to lots of stuff that you're like, these weren't lyrics to a song. You know?
Well, but they'll write off an entire band as like, that band is a white power band. They are Nazis. Boom, blacklist. Yeah. I also listened to Where the Hood At by DMX. Has anybody heard this? I share no love for homo thugs, you know?
Oh, geez.
Oh, man, Where the Hood At is one of the most homophobic and actually violently homophobic songs out there. Jeez. Is anybody making an advocation for canceling DMX? R. Kelly?
R.I.P.
Yeah, well, yeah, rest in peace, D. You know, like that guy's stuff was rad. I listen to it all the time. It's one of my favorite artists, but I also listen to Screwdriver. What about R. Kelly? Can you still buy R. Kelly albums? Can you get that on Apple Music? Can you get that on Spotify? Can you find R. Kelly, or has he been canceled?
Are you telling me too?
No, I'm asking. I'm asking.
I have no idea.
Because are they still making money off of him, even though he is a degenerate human being and has been found out in a court of law to be a degenerate child predator?
Still on Apple Music.
It's still on Apple Music. So don't fucking be a hypocrite with what you censor. These guys said a racist thing in a song. Well, so did Axl Rose in fucking 1 in a Million. You know, but Axl Rose you could still get on these songs, and he's dropping N-bombs in his songs, and he's a white guy. So shut the fuck up with this stuff. And why? Why is one considered toxic, and one, if it makes enough money, acceptable? I don't buy the hypocrisy. You know, I don't buy the hypocrisy. So, and I love DMX, and I used to like Guns N' Roses, and I've never listened to R. Kelly. But I'm not going to lie that some politically incorrect bands are right on my list. I listen to Gigi Allen. I listen to Cannibal Corpse. They're not my favorite, but, you know, I listen to all kinds of music. Why is this one little band from one little genre so taboo? What makes that so off limits? Because they have a couple songs that drop N-bombs. I don't listen to those songs. A couple of songs that say things like white power. I don't listen to those songs. Well, I might hear them, but I'm like, I don't buy that. Just like I don't buy the homo thug stuff from DMX. Or I don't buy, you know, any of this stuff from some of these other toxic artists. And it's weird in the culture we're living in. If somebody's popular enough and media feeds it to you enough, that's acceptable.
You know, I was thinking though, I think maybe the difference is though is that like there's always been at least a facade of some sort of like social and political awareness out of punks, even if they were like the crustiest, just pieces of shit on the street. They still felt like they had some sort of fucking nobility about what was going on socially in the world. So like the whole Nazi punks fuck off jumping on early.
Yep.
That's something that it's like it's as soon as you hear that from another a group of your genre, and then you're like, oh, wait a minute, they're Nazis. We got them. We got some right here. And then it's easy to vilify because it's already part of what you're doing, and then you see it what even a smidgen of it within your thing. Whereas I never felt there's that much like that attempt to act like you're socially conscious and shit within hip hop. You know what I mean? Where somebody's being a piece of shit.
They
It's
are
like,
street level thugs.
yeah, you're not calling somebody else on their other shit unless it's like the stuff you're into and it conflicts with it in some way. Whereas with this was like ideology shit, right?
Well, okay, so that's
So it's easy to. I'm saying it's easy to vilify them then, and then there you got the stigma for the rest.
You know
of
what
your
I
career.
see it as? I see it as European white gangster kids that were in very similar socioeconomic environments to the urban black community, short of like slavery and stuff like that. But like they were getting jumped in their neighborhoods. They were fighting to survive. They had no jobs, no prospects. Society at large wouldn't hire them. And they used that anger towards an ideology versus making money, pimping women, you know, guns and gangs. They're like, don't you know there's something wrong in our society? And all of a sudden, National Front and the British movement said, well, this is it. And they're like, oh, we're running with it. And like those lyrics resonated with a whole bunch of disenfranchised young people. And they just got swept up in a subculture, you know. But Oi music, I'd say 80% of it has no racist overtones. You know, obviously traditional skinhead music. There's a band called the Redskins, and they were like Scar, but like straight up skinheads, and they were communists. Their entire stuff is about social justice and political equity, you know, economic equity. Of course, the Screwdriver fans and the Redskins fans would be battling in the streets. They'd raid each other's gigs and firebomb and stuff like that. But that's just that straight up gang culture.
Bombing.
That's well, man. In hip hop, you hear about drive-bys every day,
Oh, yeah.
and I can't like this really blows my mind. A friend of mine the other day, she's like, "Well, you know, serial killers are all white," and I'm like, "Yeah, because the other ones just join gangs." Right? Well, a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe they're not sitting there masturbating and hiding bodies under their body or under their house, but like I don't know that ballad
it's
of
like
Danny Wolf I just read.
The
14 drive-bys.
that's a spree killer. But like it's almost like even the level of being a serial killer, you almost need some white privilege to get there.
That's
you
a
know
good
what I
point.
mean?
Yeah,
'Cause
you need to have a place to hide them in a vehicle.
You can't be someone who's like, because lots of those guys are like, they'll be either in or near law enforcement, like they'll try and have themselves integrated into the fucking things where they're looking for them, and a lot of that kind of stuff you just can't do if you're from a marginalized community. You can't
Richard Ramirez.
Well, yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he was, but as soon as they were looking for him, he was
Quite easy to find.
Fucking the community found him. The community sussed him out, right?
See, and that's another interesting
Tough to
thing,
do if
right?
you're just just another milk toast white guy dressed like everybody else at the mall.
Like the Ted Bundy and Jeffrey Dahmers. They can
Fucking
fit
nice,
into
man.
the mall very,
See,
very easily.
you have to have a certain level of white male privilege to even get to that.
Yeah, that's a good point. And you know, and that white male privilege allows groups like outlaw biker communities to be the upper echelons of organized crime because they can meld into that invisible part of society very easy. The part that doesn't get as policed as hard as, you know, that's valid. But just to rewind a little bit, I just get tired of there's one set of rules for this group and another set of rules for this group over here. These guys, they sing about race issues. That's horrible. These guys over here sing about race issues. That's noble. These people over here talk about gender and tradition. Well, that's offensive and oppressive. But these people over here talk about gender and what they want to do with their new traditions, and that's a noble cause. So I see a real double standard. And a lot of the Oi music is just conservative. You know, not even as conservative as American Republican. You know, but because they won't disavow racism very openly and wear like the Nazi punk fuck off kind of stuff, they're dodgy. I don't trust that band. And I'm like, well, why not? Well, I remember one of my other favorite bands, Close Shave. I've been listening to this band since I was 14. They have one song that says some stuff about gay people. One song. And I'm like, where the hood at, man? Like, that song's raunchy, but nobody's calling that out. That's acceptable because he's a marginalized, disenfranchised black guy from America. But these marginalized, disenfranchised white guys from England, well, they should know better.
Yeah, but I'm just in those scenarios, like who's calling them out? Like, was it people of their community?
Both.
Who outside?
Who's calling out the oi bands?
Yeah.
Okay, so
I'm just curious because it's like I don't know, I don't know that I've heard like mainstream attacks on oi bands. You know what I mean? And where I think is like because if it's within your own culture of music and it's attacking yourself, maybe that's why you didn't see it in the hip hop, because there wasn't mainstream influence and looking in on either of those songs, for example. You know what I mean? Maybe there was never mainstream influence. It was only for the market, and then the market was going to decide whether or not it was going to be upset about it.
Okay,
you know
so
what I mean?
oi bands that are considered dodgy or
because like I listen to punk, and I have no idea who you're talking about with Close Shave. I've never heard them.
So
you know what I mean?
that's just it, because they're a skinhead band. Straight up. And so, you have ARA, anti-racist action, you have Antifa, you have anti-fascist action, you also have traditional skins, like the guys that listen to ska and, two-tone music, plus you have the Sharps, Skinheads Against Racial Prejudice, plus you have bands like Dead Kennedys writing songs, Nazi punks, fuck off. You have all of these communities that are holding the bands that aren't as politically correct accountable. And that doesn't even count the ones that are openly fascist and racist. Like, obviously, those guys are fucking boneheads. They're Nazis, right? So, okay, fuck them, right? Cool. But then you got the bands that aren't saying, we're anti-racist. We are sharp.
That's not enough.
That's not enough.
Yeah.
You can't just be, I'm apolitical. Like, one of my other favorite bands is a band called Haymaker. They get called out all the time because the guy says, fuck communism and fuck fascism. Fuck racists, fuck communists. I don't care about either your shit. I'm just a working class slob. And they're like, you're dodgy because you're not calling out the other guys. And I'm like, that's so fucked, man, that you like, there's this movement that you have to be on like the right side of morality. And if you aren't, you're obviously on the wrong side of morality. I'm like, well, man, I don't expect everybody I meet to be vegan,
No, for sure.
And it blows my mind. Yeah.
No, I just think the only like that side of that is that's where those guys hide, right?
Which guys hide?
Is the ones actually with ill intent. When other people do know about them but don't speak out about them, right?
Okay.
And that's when they get to kind of still commingle and like, no, we're still sort of legitimate. And I think that's their argument. And I don't think it's legitimate all the time in every sense, because that's like the good old boys club hiding that thin blue line, right? Like, well, my cousin's a cop,
there's some rotten apples in the group.
That's what I'm saying, right?
And they can hide in that group. But that being
no
said,
one's speaking out against it.
Do you
right?
really think that? Okay, so I've been accused of like, man, that music you're playing, the imagery you're using, it's a little too close to that politically incorrect stuff. And I'm like, but I'm not. And you don't care to look any further? That's a you problem and not a me problem.
Plus, it's also part of kind of the culture of what I do is on the edge of what's socially acceptable. I don't know if you noticed everything else around you.
Yeah, my entire life.
Like, this is what it is.
Yeah, and
you share stuff like that. It's almost just like, well, thank you then. That was kind of my goal. I guess.
I'm happy you're uncomfortable.
I'm glad you recognized it. That's so cool that you actually know where this comes from.
Okay, I'll tell you a story. When there used to be a place, Night Magic, and they did punk rock nights, and they like the DJ played some pretty good music and stuff. And I went with the band Decontrol and our group of friends. We all showed up there, and there was these two obviously skinheads, but they were obviously Nazi skinheads. They had all the badges, and like they were wearing the right outfits, and they were recognized as like, those guys are obviously white power. And they're like, we should jump them. I'm like, do you know them? Like, so no, we're not going to jump them or just like start throwing bottles at them by virtue of I don't like their politics. Yep. So I'm like, hey guys, what's going on? And they're like, they were ready. They were like, what the fuck, like, is it go time? And I'm like, no, I'm Pat. Nice to meet you. And we started chatting a little bit. And I'm like, you know what? I get it. Because I used to be right into that stuff, and I kind of got out of it. And I'm like, you know how you guys believe in this idea of 14 words? It's one of these dog whistles. It's like, we must fight to secure a future for the white children or some shit like that. I'm like, dude, I believe in 13 words. We must fight to secure a future for children. Period. You just leave the word white out. And I agree with that. I don't think it needs to be limited to one color. I think we need to secure a future for children and build a better world. And he's like, I never thought of it that way. Cool. Guess what? You didn't need to get a bottle in your head for me to have a conversation with you and try to steer you away from that a little bit. You know what I mean? And I'm like, dude, I hate assholes too. I hate people that are immoral, and I don't think it's limited to color. And he's like, yeah, assholes come in every color. You know, I know this white guy's a piece of shit. I'm like, exactly. So you have that dialogue, and suddenly you don't have an enemy anymore. And then I talked him out of getting some racist kind of tattoos, and I steered him towards more moderate tattoos. And now he's out of it. He's out of it. Now, if we just sat there and bottled him in his head, what benefit would have that done?
Drive him further into it.
Yes, he would run away. See, they're right. They're out to get us. They're out to get us. And I see that dichotomy happening on the internet, on the streets, at all these rallies all the time. Zero interest in dialogue, 100% interest in judgment. The exact same thing that you were blaming them for. And that's fucked. If you want to outlaw a band because of 5 songs out of their entire discography, I'm like, okay, cool. I guess that's where you're at. That betrays more about your politics than it does about theirs. So, and it justifies a lot of these things. They'll go to a rally. Why are we being, or they'll go to a gig. Why are we being arrested? But these like communists and Antifa people out there are throwing bricks at us. And we're the ones going to jail. Boy, thanks for proving our point. So that's something to keep in mind when people are all gung-ho on judging anybody right of center, right? It's like, judgment and a lack of compassion and a lack of understanding and not wanting to heal anything and just wanting to escalate and cause a war and to fight people, that doesn't heal a society at all. You know, not understanding why gangbangers are gangbangers and just putting them in jail without trying to give them any outroads, that's not healing them, right? So, yeah, I don't know. I'm interested in subculture. I'm in all subcultures of all kinds of people. And there's a reason why young people in California get involved with gang culture. There's a reason why the young disenfranchised people in England got involved with skinhead culture or, you know, any of the subcultures. There's a reason I got involved with punk rock. Well, you know, through my evolution. Or bikers. There's a reason motorcycle guys get into alternative subculture stuff because they want a freedom that they feel they don't have. You know? Mm-hmm. And if you're just going to look at them and say, oh, you must be a criminal because you identify as some sort of like subculture outlaw. So you're the enemy right away. You should be tossed in jail. I don't necessarily buy that narrative too much.
Well, and I feel like lots of people that get involved in shit like that, it's because they've never had control. You know what I mean? So you look for these places where you make your own club, you make your own bike,
some self-esteem.
make your own music, you make your own clique, you know, like something you can be a part of and have control of. Because you didn't have it where the fuck else you are in your life.
Yep, I agree 100%. 100%.
And it's just unfortunate because then that does manifest negatively a lot of times because it's like, you know, I got power and I got control over my life. Now it's like, okay, well now, what shitty things can I do real quick and get away with?
That's a good point, yeah.
So it's tough to not transition into that. But
in the punk scene, you see fucking all kinds of creepy predators. You know what I mean? And I imagine in the hip-hop scene, you see the same thing. I went to, I think it was Jizza, the Wu-Tang Clan, with one of my coworkers a while ago, and I've never seen violence at a concert like I have in hip-hop shows. Guys getting their stomping, groups of 6 guys stomping on people's heads over bullshit, spilt beers, you know, looking at somebody's girlfriend. And I've been to death metal shows, black metal shows, punk rock shows, oi shows, and somebody falls down in the pit and people they don't know pick them up.
Yeah.
You know?
I've seen like crazy sketchy shit at like those type of shows that wasn't of the scene. You know, like people that lived in the area pulling shotguns on people. But like working hip hop shows specifically, I remember the last one I worked at fucking that place on 8th Street there that used to do Pasa Pasa.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I don't know if they still do it or not, but the last one I worked, like,
I think I saw you at that Pasa Pasa.
Guys bottled, bear sprayed, fucking handguns fucking fired into pickup trucks while ripping through parking lots. Like, I'm just like, I don't need to do this anymore.
Yeah, we're working
15 fucking bucks an hour.
15 bucks an hour for putting your life on the line. Yeah, exactly. Those dyke clubs that get Molotov cocktail because they won't let the wrong hip-hop crew in and they come back and literally firebomb the entrance of a club. This happened down the street from here.
Yep.
That's a different value system. You know what I mean? Than what I'm used to. And do I have a right to say, sorry, I don't agree with that value system?
It's not my world. It's
oh, so is that it?
You know what I mean?
No. Is that
I mean,
the litmus test?
No,
it's not my world, so I can't judge?
No, I'm not telling you what to do.
No, I'm asking.
I'm saying in my circumstance, when I started seeing all of that, because even that, like, I remember thinking at the time, like, why the fuck would you bear spray all these people? Why would you even come back and engage in this? Like, there has to be some sort of clout or value in it, but maybe there is within their social group, and it's going to be on Instagram or Twitter what the fuck was going on, and everybody's going to know. Everybody who was there is going to know, and then there's going to be some value in that, and you know, and it's their whole fucking thing. I'm working the door. I'm like, I don't want to do any of this. You know what I mean? So I'm like, I just don't want to be part of this fucking world. You know, and I don't think there's value in it. I don't think that you're going to get anything good out of that. But I think that's the reason they're doing it. That's to get value in that version of the fucking world they're living in that I just don't want to be a part of.
Well, in the Indian posse, you couldn't be a specific ranking officer unless you did federal time.
Sure.
So it was a goal for them to get that charge, to get put in a prison so they could raise in the ranks of their gang.
Yeah.
And that's a value system I just can't relate to. And I don't know, God forbid, I'm never going to put it in art. I'm never going to say that as a part of a song. And if I did, is that a racist commentary? To say, sorry, this system or your worldview doesn't match my worldview. I don't believe in doing that. Oh my God, how oppressive of you to judge somebody who's not like you.
I see that from everybody around me too, though. It's just varying levels of disgust and their impact on the world around me. You know what I mean?
I see varying levels of disgust.
There's lots of people I see that I'm just like, oh man, I don't want to ever know what your fucking opinion is on anything, right?
Yeah,
and it's as
that's
minor
fair.
as that. And then there are other people that are still fucking up the community in general. But
Yeah. There's a lot of that's funny because
it's all levels.
Well, this is an interesting point. When I was still on Facebook, all of the most judgmental dudes against, whatever, transgendered rights, socialism, gay people, Muslims, all of it, the most judgmental guys that are stomping up and down, talking about defending our cultural values, are also the most date rapey, imposing, bullies that I know. The blue collar white guys like fuck anybody different than me, and like I'm gonna get super shit faced and start a fight at the bar.
The
and
fuck
probably
Trudeau
date rape
stickers
someone.
in the back window.
Yeah, the fuck Trudeau guys.
Yeah.
They are the most
Talking
toxic.
to you, Ernie.
They're the most toxic examples of people from my culture that are there. Like, they're not coming from a place. I think we mentioned that on the last podcast. They're not coming from a place of legitimate inquiry.
I still think this is still the last podcast, isn't it? That's still when I got to end this.
Yeah, you
Time warp 2 weeks.
You kind of slowed down there. There was a bit of a conversation silence. And I'm like, come on, Dusty, come on, drag it out. Drag it out.
Judging me?
You're judging you. You need
getting
Red
candy
Bull.
out of my candy jug.
All right. Well, yeah, and it's funny because I've always been I've always been interested in the things that people tell me I'm not supposed to be interested in. I remember being a young guy playing in a punk rock band, kind of like hardcore stuff, and my friends like, we don't listen to Slapshot. I'm like, why don't we listen to Slapshot? Oh, they're hardline straight edge. They're very against booze, like to the point of violence. I'm like, where can I buy some Slapshot? You tell me I'm not supposed to read that book, I want to read the book. You tell me I'm not supposed to listen to that band, I'm going to listen to what that band has to say. Yeah. And that's just it. It's that dark side stuff, it's always been interested in.
And I feel like that a little bit too. Like, I don't know if I'm like actively being like, somebody says something, I'm going to try and do the opposite.
I'm not
just to be reactionary.
I'm going to look at it though.
But because I think I found value in those kind of things so many times that like I very rarely listen to the radio because I like music that I just don't find on the fucking radio.
Yep.
You know what I mean? It's the same kind of shit. The shit you're going to find off the beaten path and all. Don't go down that alley. You never know what's going to be down there. One of my favorite memories of all time was my first summer in Saskatoon as an adult, partying in the alley between your shop and Lee's shop with the bands playing in there and the keg in your
that was
place.
a crazy little time.
If I stayed out of alleys, I wouldn't have experiences like that.
If you don't go to the underworld, you don't see what it's all about. And, look at Kink. For how many years? That's just, don't do it. Don't go there. Well, why? And then you go there, you're like, it was never really as bad as they made it out to be. And how can you really have an objective opinion on what is wrong with something if you don't actually know what it is? And that is basically it. If you say, I'm judging this and I don't like that band or I don't like that subculture or I don't like those people over there, do you know any of them? Have you listened to the band? Have you been involved in the subculture that you can have an objective opinion on it? Or are you just listening to the propaganda and narrative that says that you're not supposed to? So I read band books. I think it's important to, and I listen to music that you aren't supposed to listen to. And then I'm able to have an objective opinion on what made sense about what they were saying and what was bullshit. It's easy to say, oh, this thing is so taboo, we don't even touch it.
Well, to me, it always seemed like such a weak mind fucking thing to be like, look, this book or music, it can't even exist. Because if somebody reads it and learns about it, well, who knows what can happen? And it's like, What the fuck is wrong with you that you can't control yourself after reading something or
Yep.
listening to something?
Well, and I've got this wacky idea that people that say I'm not allowed to be criticized, you're not allowed to ask any questions about what I'm doing or what I've said, anybody who's like, you need to shut up if you're criticizing me, is legitimately trying to hide something.
Yeah.
Because there's something about what they're up to that they know can't hold water, and if you criticize it too much, it's going to be exposed. And if you say, you're not allowed to talk about this, you're not allowed to criticize me, you're not allowed to look at me, you have to shut up, well, what are you trying to hide? What are you trying to hide? Because if you got nothing to hide, say, fucking talk about me, criticize me. Let's engage in a dialogue.
Equality?
It's
while
not.
we're at it,
It's not.
because I'm not allowed to impose the same rules upon.
Yes, there's a
anyone
huge
else.
double standard happening.
Yeah.
But, you know, I guess.
Just carry it. I guess we'll just carry it.
Yeah, I won't notice it the more I'm off social media, you know,
Yeah,
the further
right.
away I am, right? But I got to be careful not to fall into the wrong echo chambers. And this is
See, and I'm always trying to just curate my echo chambers. I want good ones. I want things I enjoy coming at me all the fucking time.
well, is that
I get
good?
it's it doesn't hurt.
It's comfortable.
it's nice.
comfortable.
It's comfortable. It keeps me
Yeah.
engaged in the things that bring me joy and you know, and I mean, if I still want to know what's going on, you know, I can always plug myself back in. But like to just see shit that like gets me excited to fucking go and do things I like doing.
Yep, that's fair.
That's why I want.
Well,
that
and that's
fucking
gonna make
social
your
media
life
content.
better, 100%.
You know, I want to see like my fucking my cousin, her kid was building his Halloween costume, and he's building this really cool Venom fucking thing from I think the comic book character Venom. You know,
Mm-hmm.
Super stoked on seeing that develop. You know what I mean? I'm gonna click some likes on that. I want to see more of that. I want to cultivate that. Yeah. Dogs in wheelchairs. I don't like dogs in wheelchairs in the first place, but I love watching videos of them.
Yeah, I like watching happy animal videos.
Right?
This is like the same thing with my vegan trip, right? I could be posting all kinds of atrocity and factory farming slaughter videos, or I could just be posting a lot of cute barnyard animals and
Yeah.
say, you know what? These guys are real cute. They remind you of your pet.
Yeah.
You don't need
Yeah.
to eat them. And that's me and my political activism. That's about as far as it goes, you know.
Posting videos of ducks.
Cute little ducks and cute little cows and
Duck
like
in a
getting
hat.
excited. My favorite is a calf who gets really excited about a big rubber ball and he starts doing the goat jumps around. And I'm like, fuck, you know, yeah. That's
Yeah.
why. That's why. Big.
Yeah, you still want veal, motherfucker?
motherfucker.
Yeah,
Okay. All right. And so I think we're time.
I think so.
What are we at?
An hour 45.
Yeah, that's a good time. All right.
was-
Thanks
yeah.
for listening. Like, subscribe, comment on anything. If you want us to start doing videos again, I will, but it's easier if we don't. Okay.
And you know how I feel about easier.
Yeah. Donate. Find our Patreon. Give us money. Send us checks. Carefully hidden money in a self-addressed stamped envelope. We'll send you a envelope full of pubic hair back.
Actually, if you could send me a treasure map, and we'll just start there.
Okay. Yes.
I'm into treasure maps. Let's go.
And I'll trade pubic hair for money.
Jesus.
All right. Thank you.
farming some.
Have a good one.
Bye.